What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And this week, I'm going to ask you a question that'll really set up this episode. Do any of you harbor ambitions to start a business and grow it rapidly, be very successful in the growth of your business, and at the same time, put in place systems that are going to allow you to free up your time? Now, what do you do with your time when you have all of this extra freedom? Well, what if I suggested that you move from your home in the UK, or let's say it was Ireland, and you decided to go all the way to Sydney, Australia, and put down roots in Sydney, Australia, but all the while fully maintaining your successful business back in the UK? Or for those of you listening here in Ireland, that would be the plan. Run your business from Australia. Enjoy the weather, the lifestyle, all of that, but have the income that you are creating. Well, my guest today has done exactly that. And in fact, more. He's recently started a new coaching business, and that coaching business is successfully attracting clients in from the US and the UK and various places like that, all the while him living in in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. Now, he actually hosted an event back in the end of June, and he asked me to come and speak at that event. So I was over there and I got to listen in on some of his, teachings and his coaching and stuff like that. And I have to say, very, very interesting stuff. I took a lot of notes as I was listening in. So I think you're going to get a lot of value from our guest today. He likes to help his coaching business. What he tries to do is help contractors to grow their business. So I think you're going to get a ton of value from this. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my conversation with Mr. Greg Wilkes. Greg Wilkes, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be on, Gavin.
Greg, thanks so much for being here today. Those of you who are listening into my podcast will be familiar with your name because I did mention that you had invited me over to speak at your event in London. And so it's great to have you here. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I do think people are going to be interested to know how a UK contractor ended up in Sydney, Australia, the other side of the world, with a successful international coaching business. So we're going to go through that whole process and the ups and downs and things like that. But why don't we begin with, well, first of all, can you give us your elevator pitch as to who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah, nice and simple elevator pitch. So I'm a construction business coach. We coach business owners generally how to grow from between £1 and £5 million. And our ultimate aim is to give business owners more time, freedom, and money. Those three things.
Nice and simple. I like it. Yeah, that's the pitch. And tell us, if we go back in time to, your younger years when you're kind of say coming out of school or university and stuff like that, how did you end up in the property / construction sector?
Yeah, so when I was at school, interestingly, I started the entrepreneur journey, if you like, at about 14, 15, started a window cleaning company. And I got a taste of earning money very early on and loved it. Not just the money side, though. I think I loved the fact that you could create something out of nothing and you were in control of what you were doing. So for me, it's fantastic to be able, I was earning sort of 50 to 70 pounds an evening whilst my mates were doing their homework or whatever else, which I should have been doing. And yeah, I just love that buzz of winning work. I still love the buzz of winning work now. There's something about sales and winning sales. So that's how it started. And I think from 14, 15 years old, I knew that forevermore I'd be working for myself. That was the dream for me. So that started. I was convinced I was going to be a millionaire window cleaner at 15. And then about 16, 17, I realized window cleaning just wasn't for me. It was a little bit boring and not saying there's anything wrong with window cleaning, but for me, I didn't enjoy it at all. So my dad said, I'll come and get a trade. And he was a bricklayer. And he said, I'll get a carpentry apprenticeship. And I sort of fell into it from there, which I think most contractors do. You sort of end up going into it because your dad was a bricklayer or carpenter and you sort of just follow in the same lines. And I didn't get amazing grades at school, so there wasn't that many options for me really. So I thought, right, let's get a trade and do that. Started the trade and worked with my dad till I was about 18, 19. So that was initially how I got into building as a start. And then from there, I think I was about 19, 20. I really wanted to start my own business. And it started actually, one of my dad's friend was doing loft conversions in Ealing, and he was working for a company called Top Flight. And at the time in Ealing, or in London, they were the biggest loft conversion company in London. They had about 40 teams on, so they're doing about 40 lofts at any one point. So they were huge. And what fascinated me about this is that the owner of Top Flight had no construction experience whatsoever. He was just a salesman.
Wow.
But everyone just thought, and he just thought he was absolutely minted. And I just thought, wow, that's what I want to do. I want to do loft conversions. So from about 20 years old, I teamed up with a roofer and we started doing loft conversions. And that's how it started. That's how we started our first little business.
And how did it go? I mean, loft conversions, like it's an obvious way to create value in a property and things like that. So you were doing this as a contractor, so working for a client who owned the property, presumably.
Yeah, that's it. So first of all, we were working as a subcontractor, and then all of a sudden someone saw us doing one in the street and they wanted to use us. At the time, in London, we're probably talking, what year we're in now? Probably around the 2000s. There was an absolute boom in that sort of work. So we won one loft conversion, customer loved it, and then we're off onto the next one. So it went really well. To be honest, at 20, 21 years old, I was earning an absolute fortune. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I was earning really good money as a carpenter. Yeah, it was great.
And tell me this, I mean, because I talk about that early success can often be very intoxicating, but it can also be where you establish a lot of negative, bad habits and things like that. Did you do any of that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, I guess when you get success straight away, you take it for granted a little bit and you think it's always going to be there. So, and it was always there for us. I must say, we went for a few sort of mini recessions after 2000, but we were never affected. It really didn't affect us at all. So you sort of feel like you're a little bit invincible as a businessman, as a company. So that was a little bit dangerous because sometimes you're building foundations on just we didn't have foundations, I guess. We were just going along with it and cracking on and earning good money. And so that was a danger. Yeah, you sort of take it for granted. So when things did get bad for us, I mean, we grew pretty big actually. And if I just rewind a little step on that. The biggest challenge I had, I guess, at that point was with my business partner. So I think I was about 24, 25 years old, and things were going really well, but I had a family. I wanted to earn some more money, and he was quite settled with just keeping the business as it was. And probably the biggest challenge in business to that point was that we were starting to drift apart and having a bit of a rift. And that was dangerous because now the business was stagnating because none of us would push it forward because we were resisting against each other. So that was probably the biggest challenge at that point.
And like, what was the solution? Is it to buy him out, or he buys you out, or how did you resolve that?
Yeah, I had to buy him out. It was really messy because he was my best mate as well. So, we used to go on holidays together, and our wives got on. He's still a really good mate of mine now, but at the time he was going through a divorce, so he was going through some personal problems. It was difficult. It was horrible. And then, having that conversation after being together for, I think, 7 or 8 years, whatever it was, and then saying, look, sorry, this isn't working for me anymore. I need to go in a different direction. I think it caught him by surprise. And the options were for him was that you either buy me out, I buy you out, or we just let it go to pot and start new businesses altogether. So he chose the option of me buying him out. And it was the best thing I ever done in business. As a friendship thing, it was hard. But I think our friendship grew from there because I think if we hadn't have done that, there would have been some bitterness anyway because we were going in completely different directions. So it was the right move for our friendship and for the business. And as soon as that happened, the business just went on another trajectory. It sort of really, really rocketed forward once we'd split up.
That's interesting. One of the things that one of the bit of advice that I give my coaching clients and stuff is whenever you're working with a mate, especially somebody like a best mate, it's always good to put an agreement in place when you're mates, because if something like, and I use the example usually of if somebody's going through a divorce or if somebody has died or something like that, all of a sudden, the pressure is massive. And you can find that I mean, what happened in a partnership I was in, somebody actually died, and the family basically inherited the shares in the business. And the biggest problem with that is that you're now dealing with unknown quantities, people that maybe have suspicions, maybe, and then there would be solicitors getting involved and stuff like that. And it would have been so easy to sort of say, look, how will we resolve this if such and such happens at some point in the future? And you can agree that as mates. Whereas if it actually happens, or if you go through that conflict, it's very hard to actually turn back the clock and say, well, this sounds reasonable now,
Yeah, it was 100%. That's really good advice. And I think the good thing with us, we did end it amicably, but it was difficult because I felt just horrible because he was going through a divorce and everything else. I think people were probably looking from the outside and think, oh, you took advantage of him a little bit. He was going through a tough time, and then now you're sort of kicking him in the guts and saying, right, I'm out of the business as well. So I did feel a bit of a scumbag, really.
And then, but on top of that, the fact that your business went to success, became more successful, that also has got to hurt, because the guy might be kind of thinking to himself, shit, now I could have been in that success if I had stayed,
Exactly that. Yeah. So all of that happened, and he had to start again. And I was carrying on with a business that had been there for 7-8 years and was working from that foundation, whereas he had to start all over again with some money in his pocket. But clearly that's harder to do. So yeah, it was difficult. It was tough, because then any success you then have after that, you feel bad for it when you should be celebrating it, but you're kind of holding it back a little bit because you think, well, I don't want to rub it in anyone's face. So it was an unusual time.
So tell us, I mean, did you have a difficulty then at some point? Like, did you grow too big, or what happened that created like we have success, we start to take it for granted, things go on another trajectory, success, and everything's going great. What happened?
Yeah. So as soon as we'd split up, one of the big things that happened is I headhunted someone that I've wanted for ages, a sales guy. He was awesome. Used to work for Kingspan, so he was used to dealing with larger contracts. And for us, we went from doing like a 50 grand loft conversion, and he come along and won us £1 million project. So all of a sudden, we're in a different league. And we just really grew from there. So I'm knew I had this project, was piling on the overheads, more staff were brought on, we got new offices, had about 12 or 14 in the office, about 50 odd people on site. It just got big really, really quick. And I thought it was great. I'm out playing golf, and then the accountant sending me the P&L, and I'm thinking, oh, I just made like, 100 grand profit this month and all that sort of stuff. And you think it's all going great. And then all of a sudden, I had 2 sales guys that were doing really well. But I think what happened is we'd grown so quick that we couldn't keep up with that growth, and we'd created no buffer. So we were churning work around so fast. At the time, we needed about 400,000 to 500,000 turnover a month just to break even.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, we were only booked up for 2 to 3 months at any one point because we were churning through it so quick. And then my sales guys went from winning all that work to going for 3 months without either of them landing anything.
Wow.
And it was like, oh wow, now all of a sudden I'm going to be out of work in sort of 4 weeks' time. So that was one of the big things that went wrong. We'd grown too fast, and I hadn't created a long enough buffer for work. The second thing that went wrong was that because we were so desperate to bring on so much work, we were taking the wrong type of clients on. And that was a huge mistake. We were just literally taking anything on. And in your gut when you shouldn't take that certain type of person on, and we did. And that meant we were having legal battles and all sorts of people not wanting to pay us. And then we had some bad stuff that went on. Like we had a customer die midway through a job, and they owed us about 100,000. And
wow.
that all went wrong, and we couldn't get the money out of the sun. And so we just had an accumulation of all these events all at once. And really, I didn't have the foundation wasn't there in the business. I didn't have a big enough financial buffer behind me. And we got to a point where we couldn't carry on. And I'm talking to liquidators, and they're saying to me, you're actually insolvent and you need to close the business. And
wow,
I couldn't believe it. It was we'd gone from literally, unbelievable success to rock bottom really, really fast.
And so the period of time you're talking about is what, 3-4 months or something like that?
Yeah, I guess maybe a little bit longer than that. There were some cracks appearing probably before that. So yeah, I'd probably say overall it probably took about a year from when things started happening to actually when we actually closed the business,
Wow.
because we tried to keep it going for a little bit longer. But yeah, it was. But in the scheme of things, that felt quick.
And tell me this, I mean, we spoke on your podcast about, resilience and what it, like, what does it feel like to be the big success, making, 400 grand a month and stuff like that, and then suddenly you've gone insolvent? Like, describe the feelings and describe like how long you struggled through that kind of wallowing kind of difficulty.
Yeah, I must say that. I mean, some people look at going bust as a business as the easy way out, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's the one of the worst experiences I've ever been through. I've never been so stressed in my life. I had, especially in building, because it's quite an aggressive sort of industry, isn't it, sometimes? And I had people ringing me up, I had people threatening me, threatening to, saying I know where you live and I'm coming around, and now I'm thinking, well, I've got young kids and all that sort of stuff. And so my head was in a bad place. It was awful, absolutely awful. And yeah, if
The worst,
anyone's ever going
the,
through that, I know how you feel.
the worst thing about the construction business is the fact that so many subcontractors are involved, that there's guys that you're getting paid and you pay them, and if you haven't been paid, then you can't pay them, but they've done the work, so they deserve to be paid in their mind. And so you're stuck as kind of the intermediary between a bad non-paying client and the guy that's done the work for you. So yeah,
Yeah,
really difficult. Yeah, we
really,
had
really tough. Yeah.
we had a very, very severe crash in 2008, following 2008, and one in every two jobs in the Irish construction industry was lost. And so it wasn't just, one company, it was every single company
Mm.
was brought down like that. And so we're still actually trying to recover today, the country. We're still at 1/3 of the construction capacity that we were in 2008.
Wow, wow,
Still
that's what,
today,
20, 25 years on. Yeah,
yeah, it's incredible. So
yeah.
anyway, Greg, tell us, how did you turn things around? So very, very stressful. How long did that stressful period last? Was it
Yeah, it was a little while. I think the insolvency was probably sort of 3 to 6 months, and that was difficult because I not only was the money a problem. You're not earning any money. You're using your savings to pay the people that are threatening you and whatever else. The people that you feel like you had to pay. And then you had the staff as well that I felt really bad about. I had staff that were with me for years, and then you think, well, they've got mortgages and families and whatever else. And then I felt obliged to get going again. So I had a decision to make. I either thought, like, now's my way out. Let's get out of this industry once and for all and do something else. So there was a little bit of soul searching, thinking, what am I going to do? And then I thought, well, what else actually am I going to do?
and you
Because
did,
yeah, and I also thought, I knew I had success up to that point, so I knew we were doing some things right, and I'd just learned a huge amount of lessons on what was going wrong. So I had to pull myself back up and say, no, come on, let's get this right. And I think in my own mind, I had to make a success of it again, just for my own self-worth and self-belief. Because I thought if I'd have left it there and never tried again, I don't think I could have coped with that. So it probably, yeah, maybe 3 months or so, I thought, right, let's get back into this and get going, and just restarted a fresh company up, started from scratch, which actually the fresh company carried a debt from the old business because there was still people we needed to pay. It wasn't an easy out. So yeah, so you sort of starting with the weight around your neck, but I was absolutely determined that this time I was going to do it differently. And one of the things that was different was I spent a lot of time studying, reading a lot of books, doing a lot of courses. You spoke on my podcast actually about Tony Robbins. I actually went to a big Tony Robbins event beforehand, and I was really determined that the mindset's going to be different this time. I'm going to educate myself completely differently and actually have a plan and a strategy on how I'm going to do it. And it was completely different. The next business I created was so much easier than the first one. Yeah, went much better. So yeah, so I'd probably say the time period that I was wallowing around and not doing a lot was, yeah, probably 3 months or so. And it was interesting actually. One of my friends, it's funny that some of the things that go through your mind at the time, because I was really fed up and depressed, and I went out for a drink with one of my mates, and I was talking about things, and I said to him, I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if I'll succeed. Was I just lucky in what I'd done up to that point? And he said, I've never ever heard you speak like this. He goes, it's really weird you talking like this. But he goes, let me tell you one thing. He goes, if you carry on talking like that, it will happen again to you. He goes, it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll talk yourself into the ground again. He goes, you need to snap out of that and sort your head out. And that was a little bit of a trigger for me. I needed that sort of slap around the face and then, come on, sort yourself out. You can't be talking like this. Talk negative, it will happen. So yeah, that was a bit of a realization.
It's funny you say that. That actually reminds me of a very similar situation where one of my friends from school called me up and said, do you want to meet for a pint? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come up. And I came up to him and we were chatting, and he knew I was in the middle of all the trouble that I was in. And he was like, so how's it going? And I was just in a really negative place. And I was like, I can't afford, like I'm living in my brother's flat and I can't afford, I said, I'm not going to be able to afford to put my kids through the same school that you and I went to. And I remember when I said that, he was actually worried about me. He actually thought like that I might try to do something to myself because I was so kind of down about it. And so he kind of kept checking in with me and things like that but he was basically, man, pull yourself together. You're able to pull yourself out of this hole that you're in. And that was the point when I realized,
Yeah, if you have to have people that can talk to you straight in those situations, because otherwise you're just going to head in a downward spiral. So, if you can get someone that can snap you out of it. So I think it's so important to surround yourself, if you're ever going through things like that, surround yourself with the right people, not toxic people that are going to pull you back up, because you need them at that point.
Absolutely. So tell us, Greg, phase 2, then you're doing really well. You built it up. How long did it, what were the things that you did differently that made such a difference?
Yeah, so what I did differently was, first of all, I had a plan this time of how I was going to do it. So come up with a proper strategy, and I actually sort of documented the strategy that I was going through. And it started really with, first of all, a financial plan, make sure that I wasn't going to grow too fast, set proper KPIs for myself on, what I was going to allow my overheads to be and whatever else. So that was, the first thing. The second thing was make sure that we work for the right type of client. So I needed to really work on my marketing and attract my ideal client to me. And that was great. We got some really awesome clients. And go with your gut. If you realize someone's wrong, turn it down. It's not worth the aggro. So we got the right sort of clients. And then we just made sure that we really delivered well, because we had some legal problems beforehand, probably because we weren't delivering so great, if I was honest, in some areas. We made sure that customer service was spot on, and that was a big priority of ours. So plan, attract, delivery, and had the right staff this time, the right people on the bus, not just trying to fill seats just for the sake of it. We were very took my time on hires and made sure we were bringing the right people on board. So that was probably the big difference. There was much more strategy involved the second time around.
Yeah, people is the big thing, and they say, what is it? They say to fire quickly and hire slowly, and that's one of the things. One of the mistakes that I made in my thing was around the personnel that I brought in, and I brought in somebody that was, well, I got on well with him, but he was toxic around other members of staff, and other members of staff left because of the relationship and things like that. So it does have this kind of knock-on impact that you have to be aware of. Yeah,
I didn't realize in the first business I had that went bust, we were hiring really the wrong sort of people, and it was affecting everyone. Everyone was fed up and wanted to leave just because of these people I was bringing on board. And I remember I had one guy that I brought on who he ended up, I thought he was a genius, but I realized that there's a fine line between a genius and a lunatic, and unfortunately he was an absolute lunatic. And he ended up stealing a £500,000 contract off me and got the client to renege on a contract. It was unbelievable. So we really had the wrong people. And then I had someone else who stole 10 grand off me, one of our managers, and all sorts going on. So the second time right around, I thought, no, this we're really going to take our time and get it right. And interestingly enough, the team that I hired for my second building company, I've probably got 80% of those team members now in my coaching business. Yeah.
So tell us, that's a great segue into the next thing. did you sell your contracting business, or what did you do that kind of create the coaching business?
Yeah, so what happened on the second business I created, I was all about getting some time back for myself as well. I was never going to work as hard, and I really wanted to fulfill my passion, which was property developing. So I created the construction business, which gave me cash and a cash buffer to then start getting into property development myself. So I was running the two concurrently, and in the end, I had nothing on the scale that you have, Gavin. But for me, it was some really nice and lucrative property deals that we had. And that enabled me to then stop working for clients anymore. So the business morphed from a construction business into a property development company. So there wasn't really anything to sell because I'd used the team to move over into that. And there probably wasn't any value in a couple-year-old construction business anyway. So yeah, we got into property developing. And then once I started doing property developing, I thought I don't really want to work for clients anymore. But the problem with property is sometimes you're waiting a couple of years to get your money out of a deal. And I thought I need to do something for money. And at the time, I joined a community called Key Person of Influence with Daniel Priestley, who's a joint friend of ours.
Yeah, I've had Daniel on the podcast as well.
Yeah, he's awesome guy. And I joined his KPI community, which was about becoming a key person of influence in your industry. And as I was doing that, I thought there was a lot of coaches in there, and I thought this is the perfect program for coaches. And he was all about writing a book and whatever else. And I thought, have I got anything I could write a book about? You know, what could I do a book about? And when I thought about it, I realized that I was always coaching people. I was always coaching my friends and other business owners about how to grow their business based on some of the success we had before and the failures that I'd had, and to avoid those steps. So I thought, and with Daniel's advice, he said, well, write the book about your story, you know, write about how it went wrong and the steps you did to put it right. And so I did that, put it down. It really resonated. It done really well. The book was an Amazon #1 bestseller and got some great feedback on it. You know, still get some top reviews now. And I thought, well, there's a business here. There's a little bit of a niche because there's not many construction coaches in the UK. So that's how coaching started.
Brilliant. And so you started in the UK, but now you are based in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
So explain how that came about and explain the rationale.
Yeah, sure. So was coaching for a bit, and then we were doing a few property deals, and because we were doing property deals, we were actually moving into the properties, living in for a bit, and then flipping them. And sometimes we were living on site and building a few out on the site. So we didn't really have a fixed home at the time because we were moving around. And then COVID hit, and we were living in one of the properties during COVID, and we had enough. Really, we thought, we fancy something else. And I think because we were away from family a lot at that point, and we were seeing everyone on Zoom, we actually thought we could probably cope away from people for now. And we'd been to Australia about 5 years before, traveled and seen it, and absolutely loved it. So it was always in our heads that that's probably something we wanted to do. And we'd actually applied to put visas in a few years back, and then my wife pulled the plug. She got cold feet and didn't fancy it. But after COVID, we said, look, you only get one opportunity in life to do these sort of things, and we thought now's the time to do it. So we made a decision during COVID, put the visas in. Fortunately, the Australian government, they actually stopped all visas during COVID, so they were letting no one in. And then the outgoing Prime Minister was on so much flack because they were struggling with migration that they literally opened the floodgates. Okay. So our visa got approved immediately, even though I was over 40, so I didn't really have enough points to get in. So we got approved, and I then decided, I said to my wife, I really need to go for it with the coaching. If I want to create a business that is truly spaceless, so I can work anywhere in the world, I've got to get this coaching completely off the ground so I don't have to rely on property anymore. And I did, just went for it, and it turned into a really good success. I mean, it's still work in progress. We're still growing it, but it went really well, and that got me over to Sydney.
Tell us, that's a good point to just introduce your business. Tell us what's your business called, and I'll obviously put the things down in the show notes, but tell us a little bit about how the courses and stuff that you provide.
Sure, yeah. So it's called Develop Coaching. As I've said at the beginning, we only coach construction businesses and those that mainly are with us are probably doing some commercial stuff, but it's mainly residential builders and trades that we get on board. Interestingly enough, this is why they're probably attracted to you, Gavin, at the event, is because a lot do want to get into property development overall. So some will come to us with a company that might be at, say, £1 million, and they might want to get to 5 million, but overall they really want to do property afterwards. So we'll help them scale the business up, give the business owner more time, freedom, and money, get them, a bit of a cash buffer so that then they can do what they really want to, which is property. So I think a lot are attracted to me probably because of my journey, and that's the journey I've done. And then after they've got to 5 million or so and they start their property journey, they'll probably be making their way over to you, Gavin.
Yeah, it's a nice stepping stone. Yeah, and vice versa as well, because there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that would be contractors, and they're all over the place as well. Like I get, one of the things I love about having a podcast is that I look at the metrics and stuff, and you find that there's people listening in from all over the world. Like I see that, we're charting in Saudi Arabia and Australia and Singapore and stuff. So it is fascinating how the stories get out there. And usually there's a link. It's an English speaking, perhaps Irish or English person based in one of these countries, and they're binging your content every day. And so next minute you're popping up on the charts, So anyway, it's great. I'll put the links down. And so tell us about some of the clients and the journeys and some of the success stories that you can tell us about in your coaching.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think probably one of the biggest success stories for me was one of my clients who come on, who initially said that he wanted to get into property, but he wanted to do it. We gave him a 3-year time frame in which he wanted to do it in. And in a year, he managed to go from, it was a £1 million company. He didn't scale it huge. I think he got to about 2 million as a building company, but the real success for him was that he'd managed to sort out joint ventures and start his property journey. So after a year, he said, look, Greg, that's it. You've got to me where I want to be. And he was off and he was on his property journey and didn't have to work for clients anymore. So yeah, big success. And then we get other successes around people getting some more time back, because it's not always about scaling for scaling's sake. Sometimes people will come on and they're happy with the size of their business, but actually they just want to see their kids and have a bit of freedom and do what they really enjoy. So one of my guys who come on, who's approaching retirement, actually, he come on because he'd got himself in a little bit of debt and needed to pay his mortgage off, and he hadn't really been able to go on holidays. And he's probably been here nearly 2 years now, but last Christmas he went away for 4 weeks sailing around the Caribbean, and all he had was a satellite phone on him and was just checking in with the sites every now and again. There's not much you can do on a satellite phone, and that was just brings real joy to me, because I think, well, actually now people are really living, the business is working for them rather than them being a slave to the business. And yeah, they're the real success stories to me. So yeah, I love it when we hear things like that.
Brilliant. That's great. And tell us, I mean, one of the things that I'm getting a lot of questions about these days is, the property business, the construction business, it's very much tied into how the economy is performing. And lately the UK, obviously interest rates have gone up and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what's the impact been on your clients and things like that? And how are they dealing with this?
It's such a great question. So what's interesting for me is that I've got clients in the US, and I haven't got any Australian clients yet, but I know a lot of Australian builders here. And then I've obviously got UK clients. So I'm getting a little bit of a temperature check from the entire world. And we are definitely noticing that it's tightening up more than it ever has before. In fact, even after COVID, like there was some difficulties in COVID, but I can just sense now, because we're talking to so many people, hundreds of builders we're talking to all the time, that it's going to be a difficult winter. I really think it's going to be a tough one this year for work. So the advice we're giving our clients, the good thing is with our clients, is one thing we do make sure they do is fill that pipeline up with a ton of work, because I made the mistake of not doing that. So it's like, get your pipeline full, make sure you got like a 6-month buffer. So our guys most of them are okay. They're booked up till January, but if anyone's not, we're saying to them, don't take your foot off the gas, get as, meet those architects, get those tenders in, price that work, because you've got to get past the January, February period.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're going to struggle. You're not going to be landing jobs in November, December, January this year, because I think it's really going to, I think it's going to pinch.
Yeah.
So that's what we're.
Clients are feeling the pinch just with the interest rates that and so the clients are pulling back because of that. and then property
Yeah.
prices themselves are coming back as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to sell a property at the moment, and it fell through. Lost like, I don't know, what was it? Probably 5% on the sale price just in the space of 10 weeks because it fell through, and it's just so frustrating, So I'm seeing it myself personally, but yeah, it's painful, and prices over here in Australia, in Sydney, absolutely crazy. So we're actually hoping they're going to come down a little bit because they're
Yeah.
probably even worse than London. It's absolutely nuts, the prices here on the northern beaches. So so all round, I think everyone's feeling the pinch at the moment. It's time to really sort of drill down on your costs and make sure you're not spending too much, and make sure you're financially robust as you get through this period. I think it's going to be a tough winter.
Yeah, keep your buffer replenished if you can.
Yeah, 100%.
Brilliant. Greg, just in terms of your future plans and things like that, I mean, do you see yourself staying in Sydney, or is it an experiment that'll come to its term?
Yeah, I think we're here for a while. Yeah, we said a year initially, and it's already been 9 months now. We're absolutely loving it. Yeah, sun and sea, and yeah, quite a laid back vibe over here. And it's actually, the good thing is it's working for me time wise. So I'll get on and do all my calls in the evening, which it is now. So at the moment we're at 8:30 in the evening. But I don't mind that, it stops me watching TV. And then the good thing is I've got the days to do a bit of business development or hit the beach and chill out. So yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. So I think we're out here for good. The kids won't let us go back to England. They're enjoying it. So far, yeah, we're out here for a while.
And Greg, one of the things that I just, in terms of mindset now and things like that, I've got a couple of questions that I like to ask my guests. And the first one is like the best advice that you got over the years. What is that?
Oh wow, that's
Putting you on the
tough.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah, best advice I've had over the years. I think it just comes back to what my friend said to me, that it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy if I allow myself to talk negatively. So I think that was the best advice I ever had, because it snapped me out of that talk. You can't talk like that. You've got to, you're in control of your future, and the way you talk to yourself and the conversations you're having in your own head is going to dictate where you go. So yeah, that's probably the best advice.
Yeah. And in terms of like habits and behaviors that have, been contributed most to the success that you've enjoyed, do you have any that really front of mind, that these are the habits these are my non-negotiable habits, and these have really stood to the test of time? Do you have any that stand out?
I'm a big reader. I'm a real believer in reading books, because I just think the wisdom that you get out of someone that's put their heart and soul into a book, and you're getting 50 years of experience potentially, in a few hours. So I'm a massive believer in reading books, but also not just reading it for the sake of reading, but actually highlighting things and taking points out of it and thinking, how can I apply that? So yeah, I think that's a non-negotiable habit. I think that the second non-negotiable I have is that I myself am a massive believer in coaching, not because I'm a coach, but I am coached. I've got 2 coaches myself at the moment. And although, sometimes they might not be telling me anything new. Well, they do. They tell me amazing things, but it's that accountability and people seeing things that you can't see, and surrounding yourself with an environment of people that are maybe doing a bit better than you in different areas. So that's always a non-negotiable. I will always have a mentor and a coach for myself personally, because I just want to continually keep growing.
That's a great bit of advice. Yeah. And it's funny, I say the same. Like I told you, I have my own guy, JP de Villiers, and JP is like a performance coach. It's not even necessarily business. It's actually just, he keeps me kind of dialed in and making sure that I'm kind of performing well. And I can remember on one call, it was a stressful day, and I was kind of like a little bit down in the dumps, and I was kind of like, just this has happened and this has happened. And I remember saying, I'm not going to turn this into a nagging session. And he goes, no, you're not, because I'm not going to effing let you, And I was just like, kind of, okay, well, shaken right right there and then. And it is important just to have somebody to tell you when you're starting to fall for your own negative self-talk or something like that.
And not just the coaches. I think it's the communities you surround yourself with. So fortunately, the coaches I'm with, they've got huge communities of other coaches that they're coaching. And I just recently went to Hawaii, a coaches convention, and I'm with people that are absolutely killing it in business and in life. They're just really doing so well. And it's just so powerful to be amongst that group of individuals, because sometimes it's lonely on your own in business. You haven't got anyone to talk to about your problems and that, and your wife doesn't want to know. She's like, I'll give it a rest. So who do you talk to? So I think being in a community of people that inspire you and fire you up, that's like gold to me. I love it. So they're my non-negotiables, really. Reading books, getting a coach, and being in the right community.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Okay. And then my final question for you, Greg, before we call it a day is, you're now in your 40s. And if we were to go back to young 19, 20-year-old Greg, if you had an opportunity to meet that young man and give him some advice, knowing now what you know, what advice would that be?
I think I would have followed my dreams a lot earlier and gone for it earlier. I wouldn't change the story necessarily, because the story has got me to where I am now, and I wouldn't be coaching if it wasn't for that story of it going wrong. So I wouldn't actually change any of that. But the advice would be to go for it a lot earlier. So I have always wanted to do property, but it took the business failure for me to get into property and start doing it. So, I should have been, instead of talking about it for 20 years, I should have been doing it at 20 years old. So that'd be the advice.
It's funny you say that. I spoke to a guest on the podcast like probably last year, and he's based in the US, and he has been a successful real estate broker in his mid to late 50s. And he got into property in the last few years. And I was like, you've been so successful as a broker. Like, why did you not get into property like 2 decades ago? And he was saying it was limiting self-beliefs. And he said, just like, even though he was selling all these properties to people, he wasn't in a community like what we're talking about just a minute ago, where people can make you realize that this is something that you can do yourself. And so he was in this belief that, no, my clients do that, I just bring the deals to them. And it's only when he started doing it himself, he realized, God, this is easy. Like, why didn't I start doing this 20 years ago? So
yeah, it's crazy. It's all about self-belief, because once I'd made the decision, and the decision was made that I was going to do it, I had my first deal within about 6 months. Yeah. And I thought, so, why wasn't I making that decision at 20 years old?
So true.
So, need a time machine.
Greg, how can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So developcoaching.co.uk. Jump on there. You can get a free copy of my book. That's an Amazon #1 bestseller, but I'm happy to give that away completely for free. So get on there and get the book downloaded, and you'll hear all about my failures and what went wrong.
All right. Well, Greg, thanks so much for your time today. And I'll put all the show notes. If anyone, what about social media? If somebody wants to reach out and connect with your social media?
Yeah, just search for Develop Coaching or Greg Wilkes on social, and you'll find me. I can't even remember my handles, to be honest, but I'll send you them, Gavin. You can stick them in the show notes.
Will do. All right, Greg, thanks a million, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks, mate.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my conversation there with Greg. Now, I love stories about roller coaster rides of success and then failure and then success again. And that process of going through the roller coaster ride, it's often referred to as the hero's journey. If you go and Google the hero's journey, you'll see there's an actual process that a lot of people have experienced. And when you're telling a story, it's a great way to tell a story. Many of the guests I've had on this podcast over the last 3.5, 4 years, they have similar war stories. And it's from these war stories that you gain tons and tons of insights, experience, and from that experience you gain the knowledge and the wisdom. And that is indeed where, all of the stories that I can tell, all of the advice that I can give, it has all been chiseled out, carved out of hard experiences that were perhaps very unpleasant at the time, but still they are they're always very valuable when you look back in the future. Now, Greg today mentioned towards the end there that this is one of the reasons why it's great to be in or part of some kind of a community. And that's not just a coaching community where you would actually have somebody, like a mentor or a coach or something at the top of the community, you also get enormous benefit from just the other members of the community. And so it seems like an appropriate time for me to let you guys know about this exact thing that I am creating and I'm about to launch. It's my new mastermind community, and I'm going to be launching it in September. And those of you who've been listening over the last couple of years, you are aware, I'm sure, that I have coaching programs, and I have the foundation program for junior people, novice investors. And then I have the Accelerator program for more advanced people. But what I'm actually creating here now does not involve the educational piece. What it involves is simply people that want to be a part of an active network of investors, people that are trying to achieve the same thing as you. And the benefit of being a part of a network like this is that you get to share stories, ask advice, not just of me, but of your peers and the other members in the group. And what we do in this particular group, we meet every single week, and we meet for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and we'll chat through the various things that are going on. It might be a Q&A, it might be a deal review or a critique. It could be that somebody is about to go and meet an investor and wants some guidelines. It could be that we're simply talking strategies, we're talking tactics, we're talking skills, whatever it might be. There's various tips and insights you can pick up from your peers and from your mentors and stuff like that. So that is the purpose of this group. You don't have to pay the big money for the program and for the education and all that. You just simply pay to be a member of the community. So if that sounds something of interest, and by the way, I should mention that there will also be 4 in-person meetings a year. Now, some of you may have been to my recent in-person meeting where I had our guest speaker, Mary Conway, speaking. There's going to be 4 of those a year. And so the idea is that we meet weekly, we share stories, we ask advice of one another, and then we have the quarterly meetups where we get together in person. Anyway, I'm going to put some links in the show notes if you're interested and if you'd like to learn more. I'm going to be doing a discount for anyone who signs up in the month of September, and then the price will go up in October. So it is a good time to go and check it out. So guys, I hope you found this one useful. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Greg Wilkes. And that's all for now. I will catch you again next week.